Hi, this is John Kovich of Fly Water Travel. In this video, I'm going to talk about a combination cultural and fishing trip to Cuba.
Cuando calienta el sol aquí en la playa, siento tu cuerpo vibrar.
So if you've talked to me in person or read any of my blog posts, you probably know that I'm really in love with Cuba. And one trip that I've always wanted to be able to offer there is a trip that allows guests to meet the Cuban people and to experience more of the culture. So I'm really happy to say that we now have that trip. We partnered with a great company who arranges these sorts of itineraries, and so we've been doing it for the last year or so. So let me tell you a little bit about this trip. So generally we spend 3 nights in Havana, and we are housed in a private, what they call Casa Particular. It's a Cuban guest home. And we then are able to mix with the Cuban family and our host there, which is already fantastic. It's a fantastic start to the trip. And then we are joined by our Cuban guide, and we'll spend a couple days with our guide, and they're very full days. And some of the things that we will do are a walking tour of the most historic parts of Havana, so you'll learn about the city itself and its history. We will do a car tour of all of Havana, and this is always done in vintage American convertibles. It's fantastic. We'll probably visit with an expert in the Cuban religion of Santeria, which is fascinating, very exotic, and you'll learn about that. We'll always go to a cigar factory, because this is, of course, a big part of Cuban culture, and even if you're not into cigars, you'll love it, I guarantee you. And at one point or another, we will venture outside of town, and we will usually go to the Ernest Hemingway home there, his finca outside of town, and we'll tour it, and then we'll go to the little port where he moored his famous fishing boat, the Pilar. Now, a couple things I've been able to add in, because I've got particular views on what I think we want to see, and so I've been able to customize these trips a little bit. So one thing that we've added in is a great hour at a Cuban primary school, and this school is on the way to the Hemingway house. So we spend an hour there with the staff and the students, and they're just beautiful, and so we have a lot of interaction with them, and we do bring supplies for them, and so we bring things that are so hard for them to get in Cuba, like basics, chalk and pencils and erasers and things like that. It's really great. We also have a fantastic evening in the apartment of a Cuban family, and they're a family I've gotten to know quite well. And their son and his beautiful girlfriend are amazing musicians, and so they end up playing music and singing for us for about an hour, and many guests say it's an absolute highlight of their trip. So at that point, we will be done with our portion of this trip in Havana, and we will be met early the next morning by our transportation. We will head south down towards the Zapata Peninsula. And on that first day, after about 2 hours or so of travel, we will arrive at the river, or the Rio Hatiguanico, and we will spend all that day fishing for tarpon. And this is a beautiful jungle river, and so you will get to cast for tarpon in feeder creeks where the fish are quite small, and then the main stem of the river where they're bigger, anywhere up to 80 pounds, although a lot of the fish are between 20 and 40 pounds, and it can be just fantastic. After a full day there, we will get back in our transportation. We'll drive another hour to the town of Playa Larga. Playa Larga is right on the the famous Bay of Pigs, right on the beach of the famous Bay of Pigs. And again, we will be housed in Casa Particulares, private Cuban guest homes. And we're right on the beach. It's just fantastic. And from there, we will then fish the saltwater flats of an area called Las Salinas for 3 days. Now, one thing to understand, all this is national park, and so you cannot stay there. So we have to drive every day from our small guest house out to where we meet our skiffs, and that's about a half an hour drive each way. Once out there, we will join our guides and then get out into where the fishing is. Now, a little bit about this environment. It all borders the deep water of the Bay of Pigs, which is important to know because that helps always replenish the shallow water flats that join this, and those flats are expansive. And there are also small islands that ring the Bay of Pigs from where they join the flats, and that creates great habitat as well. So you can expect to have all species of flats fish here every day of the year. So there are resident tarpon here always, and those fish are generally between 10 and 20 pounds or so, and you'll find them on the bay, the beaches of those islands. You'll find them in the mangroves and you'll find them in channels. And sometimes you'll see bigger fish, particularly if you're here in the months of May, June, and July when there maybe are a few migratory fish around. There are also lots of permit here, and if you're crazy about permit, you can tell your guide you want to do that all day long. And they're on the outside of the islands, and they're in the inside in the flats as well. There are also cuda here, and jacks here, and snapper here, and snook here as well. So it's important to come equipped with some of those flies for predatory fish like deceivers and clouser minnows and poppers. But certainly the most important fish here is the bonefish, and there are a lot of them. And so you get ample opportunity to fish for them both out of the boat and while waiting. And a lot of these fish are between 2 and 4 pounds, although there's certainly fish that are 5, 6, and 7 pounds here as well. So you really will enjoy the bone fishing. After our full day of fishing, we will come back to the casa. We'll have great free time before dinner, and that's time for you to have a nice rum drink, to go for a swim in the Bay of Pigs if you want to, wander up and down the beach, and then we'll have dinner at one of the private, what are called paladars, along the beach or in one of the neighboring villages. It's just great. On our last day, we'll generally have a pig roast, and that's done by the staff here, and we join our guides and have a great hour or so after fishing on the last day. And then we'll be done and we'll venture back to Havana for our flights out. Now, if I could just summarize, if you haven't been able to get a sense of this already, you should know that this is a trip I just love doing, and I'm so happy to be able to offer it. So if you're interested in fishing in Cuba, and you're also a person that's interested in experiencing life in Cuba and getting to know the Cuban people, I think this is a great trip for you to consider, and I really hope you will join us.
Ba, 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 ba.